If you only talk to people who are convenient to reach, your insights will suffer and your business will suffer.
Welcome to the Smart Talk series, the show for professionals who want strategies, tips, and real talk about all things PR, marketing, and social media. Your host is Melissa Vella Williamson, an award-winning, accredited, and nationally recognized PR pro and communication thought leader. And now your host, Melissa Vella Williamson.
Hello and welcome to the Smart Talk series. I'm Melissa Vella Williamson. This season, our focus is on cultural strategy. Today, I'm joined by Jessica Broome. Dr. Jessica Broome is a survey methodologist and insights professional. She founded Southpaw Insights in 2008 to conduct meaningful, human-centered research that helps organizations make smart decisions and connect with audiences. Southpaw does qualitative and quantitative research to help clients understand what people think, feel, and do. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, Melissa.
I'm so excited you can join me today. I've been loving digging into your research and learning how you think. So tell us more about your background and your career focus today.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. So today I'm the founder of Southpaw Insights, but it's been a long and winding road getting here. So I started off as a sociology major, a liberal arts major, and after college, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. So I joined the Peace Corps to buy myself 2 more years before I had to decide on a career path. And I was in the Cape Verde Islands, 400 miles off the coast of West Africa for 2 years. I taught English and ran a women's fitness group, and I had a great experience. But at the end, I realized I did not want to come back to the States and be a teacher, and I still had no idea what I wanted to do. So the last thing I did in country before I came home was sit for an exit interview where somebody from Peace Corps Washington flew in and asked me a million questions about how was your health and how was your training and how was your experience. When she finished, she was like, "What do you want to do when you go back to the States?" And I was like, "I want your job. What is this? You just get to fly around the world and talk to people? Like, what is this called? How can I do this?" So I came back to the States and I looked for any job I could find with the keyword survey or interview. And I got my first job interviewing people in state prisons all around New York. And a couple of years after that, I went back to school and then segued into working in the research arm of Edelman, which sounds like a crazy shift, but it's actually the exact same skill set, just talking to people about their opinions and their experiences, except instead of asking questions about life behind bars, I was asking about cereal and migraine medicines. So I stayed at Edelman for a few years and then went on to Ogilvy. And in 2008, I went out on my own. And I've since built up Southpaw Insights, which is a women-owned, disability-owned primary research consultancy. So we do surveys, focus groups, interviews, ethnographies, and we talk to all kinds of people from Midwest moms to C-suite executives. And all our work is under this umbrella of helping our clients understand what people think and feel and do so they can make smart decisions.
I really love that. I've always really liked asking a bunch of questions and interviewing people. I'm the person in my friends and family and colleague group where somebody will say, "My gosh, you got all that information from them? I've known that person for years." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, you just got to ask some good questions." So
right? Everybody loves to talk about themselves.
they do. And I think that if we are kind in our questioning, that can be very helpful. And, I think that obviously your natural personality and being warm, it really helps to the work. But I think in today's society, we definitely have to look to the data because there's so many assumptions that I love where data just gives us that really unbiased reality of here's what people are really thinking. And that does inspire what they do. So I think it's really important, the work that you're doing. And Jessica, you've written a lot about hard to reach audiences, which are really important to me and society. And you speak about why they're critical to include in research. So, why do you think inclusive insights are so important?
Yeah, I think it's because, we want the companies and organizations that work with us to be able to make those deep connections with people, with their stakeholders, if that's your employees or your customers or your prospects. And I believe you can't really make those connections unless you understand who those people are and what makes them tick. And I think if you only talk to the segment of your audience that's easy to find, you're going to miss hearing some critical insights. This is something I realized in my days working in criminal justice. So, one of the projects I worked on was an evaluation of two alternative to incarceration facilities. These were substance abuse treatment facilities where there's no bars on the windows. People can walk out anytime, but most people in there were court mandated to be there. So if they did leave, their alternative was some pretty serious jail time. My job was to interview people every 3 months for 2 years, both while they were in the facility and after they left. So just because of the nature of humanity and addiction, a lot of people did leave, and they would usually be on the run. They're hiding from parole or probation or the cops. And believe me when I tell you, nobody's harder to reach than a guy facing 15 to life. But that was the job I had to do. And I had developed some really good strategies to track people down and get them to talk to me when they did not want to be found. And one of the big things that I learned was when I did find people was these were the people who had a lot to say. They had really good feedback about how the program was run and why they left. And once I got them talking, they really wanted to tell me about their experience. So I realized like people who are easy to find are not the only ones with something to say. And I would say this is the same situation in the business world, right? If you only talk to people who are convenient to reach, your insights will suffer and your business will suffer. So if you want to talk to your employees and you only hear from white collar workers in the office, you're not talking to the truck drivers or the warehouse workers, your findings will be skewed. And it's the same with consumers. Some people might not be on traditional research panels, but they're still buying your products. They're still hearing your communications, and you need to listen to them. We wrote a thought piece recently called Unlocking the Value in Hidden Markets, where we specifically called out some audiences like Hispanics and the LGBTQ community who have tremendous buying power, but are often undervalued and even overlooked in traditional research. I think companies and organizations that tap into that full spectrum of consumer insights, human insights, will find hidden opportunities and make authentic connections because everyone likes to be seen for who they really are. And a brand that makes it easier to be yourself earns a permanent place in your heart.
Yeah, I think that's all very true and important that you point out. And not only does everyone like to be seen for who they are, but I think they also want to be seen for the potential of who they can be. And
Yes.
like the interviews you were doing, it's not just what did you do and how's this current experience, but also sometimes when you're having those talking and listening sessions, it gives people insights into themselves that they didn't have time to think about before.
A
Or
100%.
or no one had
Totally.
asked them about them before. So I love your focus on these hidden markets because I've certainly wrote about this in my cultural strategy column for PRSA, but then also within my first book, Smart Talk, Public Relations Essentials All Pros Should Know. And it's kind of a through line with me that I want to elevate some of the quieter communities, some of the marginalized, and the reason that they're quieter is, multifaceted sometimes. Sometimes it is cultural within their family that, hey, you're one of a lot of kids. If we're all very loud and extroverted and outgoing, the home doesn't work, right? And that certainly was part of my story.
Yep.
But there's other expectations around us as humans too that I think sometimes folks, it's not worth the fight to unpack and try to use our
Mhm.
voice. So I love that you're doing that. And actually, for our listeners here, we'll put in our show notes that some of your research you've done around women in particular, because I really talk about we need to elevate more women and their voices and their opinions and really do a little extra work to pull out that conversation. I've definitely talked about that. So I have an upcoming, from when we're recording this, my September PRSA column will be about that women benefit from self-promotion. So that'll cite some of your research that still holds true today for sure. And then I have a book, Jessica, coming about Latinas in public relations. And that'll come out in 2025 during Women's History Month. And that'll quote from there too, because what I'm seeing is no matter the ethnic background or sometimes even, where we are economically, there's still extra effort that needs to be made in certain cultural groups to have these very important insights come out. So I would
Yep,
just want to highlight that for sure. So
totally. And I can't wait to read your work. This is going to be great.
yeah, thanks. Thanks. It's definitely a rallying cry, right? For everyone to speak up a little bit more, get comfortable with how uncomfortable that is, and for us to know that we sometimes need to make a more conscious effort as professional communicators.
For sure, especially now. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really important when it comes to these segments or like niche audiences. So can you give us an example of some of the research you've done with a niche audience and like how you use those findings?
Oh, yeah, sure. A great example I have is a project we did recently, just last year with the Red Cross. And they were focused on, water safety is their big thing. And they found out that the group in the United States with the highest rate of drowning is actually Native Americans, who make up only 3% of the US population, but their drowning rate is higher than Black Americans, Hispanics, Asians. It's over double the drowning rate of white Americans. The Red Cross really wanted to understand why, what's going on here, so they could design programs that worked in these communities and communicate in an informed, authentic, culturally competent way. So we went out and we talked to youth and parents in Native communities all over the country. So a hard to find audience there, right? They're only 3% of the US population, largely concentrated in a handful of states. So really not easy to find. But we tapped into some influencers and thought leaders in the Native community and had them help us put the word out about what we were trying to do and why it was so important, what was in it for them, the benefit to their communities. We also did a lot of what we call snowball sampling, where we interview someone and then ask them, hey, who else do you know who's like you, who might be willing to talk to us? This is a common technique when we're doing research with hard to find audiences. And people that we talked to told us about all kinds of barriers about learning how to swim, everything from like logistical problems, I can't get to the pool, to just real cultural incompetence when they tried to learn. One of the stories that really resonated with me was from a mom who sent her daughter to swimming lessons, and the little girl said a prayer to the water before her swim class started. And the instructor actually made fun of her, made her really uncomfortable. And this kid, understandably, refused to ever go back to swim class.
Mm.
So the Red Cross was able to design this water safety program that targeted Native communities, emphasized the importance of water safety, and talked to people in a culturally competent way. And they're piloting this program right now in Arizona. And the hope is that it'll get rolled out in Native communities around the country and longer term, like get that drowning rate down and actually save lives.
That's really important. And that's so unfortunate. I mean, such a, in some ways, like ignorant, simplistic kind of joke someone made, probably because they were uncomfortable and hadn't experienced that yet. Really hurt that child and prevented them in some ways to going back and learning how to swim. And so being sensitive and kind of open to how people experience things is a big part of what we should be considering. But I love that now the Red Cross is really designing that water safety program with all of this in mind. And yes, please, best practice, share that, pilot that across our communities because this will probably have a crossover effect in other groups as well. I had a little brother in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program years ago, and he was from the Black community. And that one of our conversations that we had early on in our big brother, big sister type relationship was about swimming and about the beach and how much we love the beach in my family and how about him. And he told us a story about how they would go to the beach and they would drive to the beach and they'd pull up in the car and they would look at the ocean. They wouldn't get into the water. And I just thought, how disappointing is that to make the drive, make the effort, see the beautiful water, hear the waves, and just kind of sit by the car, maybe on the sand and enjoy it that way, especially in the Texas heat. So, there's a lot of different reasons when we ask, well, why aren't you going swimming? It was really fear-based. And
Mm,
that can really trickle down generation by generation. And so we have these cycles of generational challenges in our communities and even something as learning to swim. If you're afraid of it as a parent and you teach your kids to be afraid of it as a parent, and then that just perpetuates, right? And then somebody actually gets into the water unexpectedly or wants to try but has no training, and then you have these issues. So I just want to break that down that, somebody somewhere probably in his family had an adverse situation and maybe wasn't encouraged when they were trying to learn. And that's all it takes. So I think that's a really helpful story. And I'm glad the Red Cross is working with you all on that for sure.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, what is the biggest challenge your clients seem to face when they want to talk to a hard to reach audience, particularly, I guess, in this business aspect?
Hmm. Yeah, I think the challenges are both sort of macro and micro, right? At a broad 30,000 foot view, macro level, clients don't always recognize that the audience they need to talk to may be broader than they think from the outset and may include some people that are harder to find. They may have to think outside the box to get them. Like the example I gave earlier about employee surveys and people who work in offices don't always remember that there are plenty of people in their company who don't sit at a computer all day, and that's going to impact how you try to talk to them, how you try to reach them to do research. Once people understand that not everyone's like you, the world is bigger than you, the challenge sometimes becomes logistical, right? How are we going to find these people and convince them to participate in research? And one thing I've found with clients often, especially if they don't think through a research plan early on, they end up not having the resources, if it's the time or the budget or whatever, to really do it right. So it's kind of this vicious cycle. But to break the cycle, I really encourage our clients to talk to us or talk to their research partner early on while you're still in the planning stage. And researchers can ask about things that you might not have thought about and bake research in from the beginning, which is always easier than trying to pull something together at the last minute with no time and no money.
Yeah, and I find fundamentally people want to weigh in and they would like to influence and shape the development of products and programs and services with us, or can at least give us really good ideas on how to tailor or tweak something that we're doing already. And, sometimes it can be as simple. I mean, ideally, we want to work with a company like yours, Jessica, right? And someone as astute in this as you. But my goodness, even just crowdsourcing for opinions on social media, sometimes we don't even take the time to do something like that.
Right.
Or, having a simple survey. And to your point, let's say you do employee communications. Well, can that survey be accessed on a mobile device? Is that something that you're pushing out to everyone on a text channel? So it doesn't matter if they're driving a truck or they're sitting at a computer, they have access to it, right? So just being thoughtful, I think sometimes can help for sure.
Yeah, I think it's taking a step back sometimes and just kind of getting out of your own head and your own day to day.
Yeah. So, looking ahead, Jessica, what kind of trends do you see in this research area? And what does the future hold for more inclusive insights?
Yeah, I think more and more people recognize how important this is, even compared to when I started in the research world. The technology and how connected we are today make it easier than when I first got into this industry 20 years ago. I think a couple of big things that are driving inclusive insights forward from the respondent point of view, people's willingness to self-disclose and share their experiences and their opinions has kind of exploded. Like, I'm Gen X and we grew up without social media and in a time where most people wouldn't come out and say, oh, I have ADHD or I'm bisexual or I'm whatever. Now I think people are a lot more authentic and open and willing to put themselves out there. Then on the research side, I see more every day, more recognition that this is important. Talking to underrepresented groups is important. I go to research conferences all the time, and people talk about the importance of including neurodiverse people in research or using different platforms that can make surveys accessible if you're using a screen reader. These were not things we talked about 10 years ago. So there's definitely a move in that direction. And then I think there's more of an emphasis on collaboration and all the different pieces of the puzzle that need to fit together. So I can't just say, oh, hey, this is important and have everyone get on board with it. Research suppliers and our technology platforms that we use have to keep innovating with things like surveys that are accessible by screen readers, and our clients have to commit and be willing to invest in thinking out of the box when it comes to research. You can have it faster and cheaper, but that's not always the right answer. So I think all of these different audiences have to have some skin in the game.
Yeah, and I think having that human brain component to actually analyze the research and connect the dots with insights is going to be really important to keep hold on. As you mentioned, clients and just, with our economy pressures, right? Everyone's trying to see, can I do it faster? Can I do it cheaper? Maybe AI can do it. And I think that we have to keep in mind that our place to really uphold humanity and show what the values are and tell our clients what the insights are has to do with that real humane analysis that only we can do. So that's great.
Totally. I think AI can do a lot, but there still has to be a human at the helm.
Yes, absolutely. It is a tool. It is not the driver. For
Exactly.
sure. Well, let's talk about some past research that's close to my heart. I'd already mentioned I've dug into your research on women and self-promotion in particular. So, what were the major findings in that study?
Yes, I love that you dug up that study. This was a passion project that I worked on with a few other women business owners in the days before COVID. So this was back in 2019. And we had a hypothesis that women in general were averse to self-promotion, to sort of talking themselves up or talking about their accomplishments. But we wanted to collect some data to support this story. And the big finding was, yeah, we were right, right? 7 in 10 women told us they would rather minimize their successes than tell people about them. We talked to a good cross section of women around the country, and they told us they don't want to seem boastful or they don't want to make other people uncomfortable. But at the same time, our research found women in particular find other women's accomplishments really inspiring. So we end up with this, we call it the self-promotion gap, where women could really benefit from hearing other women talk about their success, but a lot of women don't want to talk about their own success or what they've done. Another interesting piece here to this research was that the narrative about women hating self-promotion does not apply equally to women of all backgrounds. We found that where half of Black women said they're very comfortable talking about their accomplishments with friends or family members, only a third of white and Hispanic women are. So this is just the beginning. We're really hoping to do a more in-depth study and really dig into and unpack some of these differences.
Yeah, I think that could be really, really helpful for our communities. And as you probably know, a lot of pros in public relations and communications are women. And so not only for our workforce, but then also our marketplace, because we influence communication and the illustration of who people are and the work we do and the messagings we create, is that we need to really understand this. And if it really is inspiring for women to learn about other women's accomplishments, then for me, and I'll just give you all a sneak peek of what I came out with after reading through this study. Some of the points I make in the book that I'm coming out with for women, encouraging more Latinas to tell their stories in particular, is that, if she has to see you to be you, then we have to tell our stories for her. And we have to work with how we are naturally wired, which is to learn about the other, be more comfortable learning about others' accomplishments, but knowing that individuals who hear your story can take that in and it may be more relatable and aspirational for them versus learning about other communities or what other types of folks are doing, right? So that proximity is power in terms of someone who lives a life that seems closer to ours might seem more relevant. And so I really want to continue to share this information that maybe if we reframe that the promotion is not so much about yourself and being seen as spoiled or too loud or too much or extra or chiflada. That there's so many words for it, Jessica,
Mm-hmm.
around the gender that's even telling.
Oh, yeah, but it's an act of service, right? If you frame it
Absolutely.
that way. Mm-hmm.
Do it for
Totally.
someone else, do it for your
Yep.
daughters, do it for your nieces, do it for the girls that come behind you, do it for the boys in your life. I have a son too. And it's interesting, I've learned over time, because he's 10 now and my daughter's turning 15 soon, that I have to actually equally try and weigh out how much I'm talking about how much potential girls have versus boys, right? And it can't be a versus conversation at all. And that's what I've learned just even mothering these children, is that as much as I'm trying to put in my girl to really work around this natural drop in self-confidence that girls tend to have when they hit those tween years, right? So we've done all this extra work of putting the daughter in Girl Scouts and Girls Inc. and Latinitas and let's try this and that I realized my son was noticing that he was missing some of that extra support. And
Mm.
yeah, one day he told me, he's like, well, it's kind of hard being a boy because I don't think there's anything really good about it. And
Oh.
I said, oh my God, my history would say blah, blah, blah otherwise. But for me, I asked him, well, son, what makes you say that? Well, there's not really anything for boys. Like there's Girl Scouts. And so we talked about, of course, Boy Scouts and whatnot. And I kind of gave him a little history lesson of why there's extra efforts being put into girls, right? To make up for some of this gap. But I've been more consciously communicating within the household and around them so that he's a good equal partner for the right person in his life in the future. But at the same time, he doesn't feel less than for not being a girl. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And we all have to be very aware of that. Because some of what I was looking at too in the self-promotion differences between Black women and Hispanic women and white women is, I think in some groups there has been extra efforts and organizations and groups that are really supporting us being more vocal, but then in some communities there's not. And I see it in the Latino Hispanic community all the time, is depending on whether conversation is on immigration, we either feel part of the US community and the fabric of the United States or othered. And even if we've been here for several generations, like it's this total back and forth. And so I think that anything we can do to really champion all of us sharing our stories and that they all matter and they all have a good value to them, I think that's really worth our time.
Oh, yes. You just gave me goosebumps when I heard you say that, for sure.
I love it. I hadn't even really unpacked it, so I need to write that up for sure. Sounds great. Well, Jessica, it sounds like us professional communicators can really use these research insights to relate better to our audiences and perhaps, like we're trying to do here, inspire some positive change. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah, completely 100% agree. I mean, everyone loves to talk about themselves and everyone likes to feel like they are seen and recognized for who they really are. So I think companies, organizations that take the time to get to know who they're talking to and ask them for input and actually use that input, that's who's going to drive that loyalty, open up the channels of communication to do great things.
Yes, I'm going to underline that twice. Use the input because aren't people so delighted when any one of us participate in a survey or choose the name for this contest or organization? And when the organization actually uses our
Oh,
input,
it's
we
a
feel like
win.
we're part of it. Yeah, we're part of that.
Yes. Yeah, we've done a lot of research about why people participate in research, and a lot of it is for, I get a little incentive, I get some money. But another big part of it is I like to have a voice. I like to express my opinion and know that it's being heard, it's being used. I think it's critical.
Love it. I love it. Well, this has been great, Jessica, and I love to really dig into conversations like this. And one question I like to pose to our community of professionals is, what does smart talk mean to you?
Oh, it's so good. And I love that your podcast is called Smart Talk because one of our core beliefs at Southpaw Insights is that smart decisions are based on smart data. And I would extend that to smart talk is based on smart data, right? If you're communicating with an audience and you don't really know who they are or what they're about, you're not going to sound smart. You're not going to sound authentic. You're not going to sound relatable. Understanding who you're talking to, what makes them tick, what language do they use to describe things, what's important to them. It's critical. If you're not informing what you say and grounding it in an understanding of and a relationship with your target audience, sometimes you might get lucky, but in general, your words are not going to hit. They're not going to resonate.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they don't hit or resonate, people just don't understand you. They don't
Tune
understand
out.
you. They don't like you. They don't like
Yep.
you. They don't tell you what's going on.
There
So,
you have it.
and then no one's smart after that. So I love that. Very good. Well, Jessica, this was delightful, and you all have a lot to offer all kinds of clients in our community. So, what's the best way for listeners to connect with you?
Thank you. Yeah, I had so much fun talking to you. I would love to hear from any of your listeners. I'm best reached by email, jessica@southpawinsights.com. My only social media is LinkedIn, but I am on LinkedIn, Jessica Broome, and Southpaw Insights as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jessica, for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks to our listeners for joining me for today's episode. If you like smart talk and strategic comms, let's collaborate. You can work with me as a trainer, a consultant, or hire my firm, MBW Communications, for strategic comms planning or PR strategy services. My book, Smart Talk, Public Relations Essentials All Pros Should Know, is available on Amazon in print or audio and offers advice, how-to tips, tools, and new PR models so aspiring and practicing pros are equipped for this evolving field. Please follow and rate this podcast if you're a fan, and follow us at MVW to get the latest on trends, trainings, and more. And as always, think smart and communicate smart. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Smart Talk series. If you learned something or enjoyed our conversation, share it on social media or send to a friend. To learn more about this and other communication topics, visit mvw360.com. That's mvw360.com.